Hey everybody, welcome back to the 59th episode of Taps and Patience, the podcast where the hosts sometimes remember what episode number they're on. My name is AJ with a company here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. Oh, how's that as a way to break open a topic?
Yeah,
we do
not subtle.
No.
So do we want to start with that?
Yeah, I didn't mean to get straight into that, but apparently we're going to get into that. So I have sold off the product side of Design the Everything, including the name, by the way. So I need to change my name. I need to kind of come up with new branding, a new logo, a new company name, and I don't know what that is yet.
Just a side note for any of our viewers who are watching this via live stream, or not live stream, via video. You're holding that snowball, and it looks really weird.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like a lollipop?
Yeah. It makes me think of, like, if you've ever watched Home Improvement, like Wilson, whenever he's behind the fence talking to Tim.
I can hold it a little bit lower, it'll probably be fine. The bigger problem is the camera's kind of low, and, like, Harrison is above it on my monitor, so I look like I'm looking up at the sky. But I feel like a little kid. I also am podcasting from my comfy chair. Really for no reason other than it sounded comfortable. And the chair that Scott bought for his desk, this used to be Scott's desk when he was here, it was the worst chair. And I just didn't want to sit in it for an hour.
Fair enough. So, you sold off the name and the products.
Yep.
What else?
Technically, I'm still 7.5% owner.
Okay.
Scott bought it from me, by the way. He is getting the website, all of the like intellectual property behind Design the Everything, so the carabiner design, our marketing materials, that kind of thing, our branding stuff, which granted he did all of anyway. And the Kickstarter account, which is actually probably the most valuable asset that Design the Everything actually had. I'm obviously still keeping all of the manufacturing equipment. I'm keeping all of the unfinished goods inventory. Scott is getting the finished goods inventory. But I will be doing all of his manufacturing for him, of course, and he'll be paying me to do that. So I'm still making the carabiners. But all of the unfinished titanium and whatever I'm keeping. And I don't really have that much. He's not really getting that much stuff. I do not have a large inventory right now. But yeah, he's taking it over. Basically, I have some outstanding orders right now. Like I'm a little bit back ordered on Kickstarter stuff, or not Kickstarter stuff, Design the Everything stuff. And I need to finish out those orders, and I need the money that I've earned from those to come into my bank account. And as soon as that happens, we'll do the bank account switch on the website. And that's kind of when it's like finalized. Like when he starts, paying the website subscription fees and starts receiving the money, then it'll be official.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it has been kind of a weight off of my shoulders, because while Design the Everything was making money, it was also, I think, kind of disproportionately heavy on the cash flow side. Like to make $1,000 basically took like spending, like you would spend $4,000 and then get back $5,000, and that was kind of a pain and always risky, because then you would like have a week where sales would go down, and then you'd be like, oh, I just spent a whole bunch of money and didn't really get paid back for it. Or conversely, you'd be like, oh, look, we just made a lot of sales, and now I have to, front a bunch of cash to get it. So I will be moving to more of the job shop work. And particularly now that I have this OM, I can niche down into small precision parts.
Good deal. So
preferably in titanium, but I'm not finding much titanium.
So you've joined the job shop space.
Yes, I'm just gonna blatantly rip off Serven Solutions business model, and I'll be launching my new company, which in the meantime we will call Derven Delusions. No, I'm still working on the branding and stuff. I have some kind of ideas of where I want to go with it. I want to keep the whole orange thing because that's how people know me, but I don't really have a name in mind yet. Oh, I'm keeping the social media stuff. That is one thing I am keeping in terms of like intellectual property. So other than the Kickstarter, that's probably the second most valuable thing that Design the Everything had. That asset.
Fair enough.
So yeah, I will tell you guys what my new company name is as soon as I know it.
Well, with that, it sounds like that you've made a big upgrade with your machines at least. So is that what led to this change? Like what was the thought process that led to this? Was it you finally get accepted by Xometry and started taking jobs and are like, ooh, this is nice? Or was it, oh, I got a new machine and I'm tired of what I'm doing, so I'm gonna go a new direction? Like what was your thought process on how
So
this decision was came about?
the new machine kind of enabled the change. It was something I was hoping for when I bought the machine. It was something I had in mind, but I wasn't sure if I would be able to. But I was just tired of like the EDC world and like having to ship a bunch of packages every day. Like it was just all very time intensive, and all the little details on the carabiners had to be just right. But also, I wasn't selling them for that much. Like I wasn't selling them at the level where like I'm selling them to people who buy Grimsmo knives and are picky about Grimsmo knives, and then they buy a $30 carabiner, but they expect a Grimsmo knife. And I was just tired of that world, and then also needing to ship 10 or 15 packages a day and maintain all that inventory and powder coat all the carabiners. And I was always behind on powder coating, so I was always doing like batches of like two just to make sure that I could get orders out the door that day. And then so I'm changing colors 12 times a day. Part of the deal with Scott taking over is I'm going to have a minimum order size on everything. So it'll probably be 8 carabiners of any color at a time. And that way I can actually powder coat with an efficient size batch. And 8 is how many carabiners come off my fixture. So
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds good. Let's see here. Are you going to try to find any local customers to start doing work for? Are you going to stick to Xometry, or have you thought that far ahead?
yes, so Xometry is a really easy way to make this change. And with the Xometry work I've taken already, I'm like on track to easily replace or exceed the income I was getting from Design the Everything. And this is like my first full month of doing it. So it's definitely an easy step into the job shop world. But then I will be looking for local customers. There's a machine shop just down the road from me that I'm going to talk to first. I'm hoping they have some small parts they might need. And then there's a surprising amount of manufacturing around here. It tends to be lower end, like high volume, just crank out parts kind of stuff. But like those people need stamping dies made or whatever, or small injection molds, that kind of thing. And I have a machine that's pretty good at that stuff.
So, what about standing in front of the machine? So, most of your work before in the product side, um, it was a combination of the Tormach is not necessarily the fastest machine out there, and you had dedicated fixtures which could allow you to run for long periods of time unattended. Now that you're doing job shop space, are you finding yourself standing in front of the machine more and more?
So for this last job I took, it was a Xometry job. It was basically a custom nut. It was like a big, almost like a lug nut that had a Torx head in the back, and it was 60 pieces. And when I started, I had a cycle time of like 7 or 8 minutes per, and I was able to get it down to like 3 or 4 minutes each. But even that I found kind of painful, and that has kind of reinforced the idea that I would like to do smaller batches and like do one-offs and um, more prototyping kind of work instead of batch production.
Okay.
So yes, my goal is to stay away from larger batches if possible. And
It's
that
like
way,
the
when I'm in front of the machine, it's all value add and not just flipping out parts.
oh man, I like the larger runs. I feel like I can actually get in gear and get moving.
Now, I will say I do understand why you want to do part loading with a robot far more.
Oh yeah.
Because on something like this, where I'm making 60 pieces, that's not enough to justify a fixture, but it's also a pain to do it in a vise.
Yeah.
And like being able to load up a robot with a pneumatic vise and just hit go, like that does make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we're hoping to do when we get our new machine at some point, is to add a robot in the front of it and get a second shift or third shift out of it. So
Yeah, I could. I'm gonna start thinking about that route now. It maybe doesn't make sense on a $18,000 2006 office mill, but maybe the next machine it might.
yeah, there's a really interesting idea, and Haas has it, and there's another company, and I can't think of their name, but they start with an M. It's like Makino or something, and they have a really Haas and this other company have a really interesting idea or product line, which is replacing the whole table of a machine, a CNC machine, in one go. So
Interesting.
if you've ever looked at Haas's pallet pool option that they have for their machines, it replaces the whole bed of the CNC machine with a new bed in one go.
Okay.
And
Yeah, it's just a pallet changing machine.
it's a pallet changing machine, but it pallet changes the whole work area.
Is it
And
just like
so,
a traditional 20 by 40 table or whatever that you're swapping out?
yeah,
Like T slots and everything?
I don't. I think so. I think so. And so
That's interesting.
it's like literally changing the whole table out. And so for the job shop space, and maybe it'll pick up. I haven't seen much or very many places around here that have done that. And for getting unattended work that a robot is not able to handle, or weird shaped parts, because I do a lot of big table work and a robot wouldn't be able to automate that. And so being able to change out the whole table in one go while it's running plate work, like I could, and this is something that I've been thinking about if I for my next machine, is getting something like that, and I could have a table set up for plate work. I could have a table set up for vacuum work. I could have a table set up for all sorts of different things, and then you could just change it out in one and change the whole thing out in one go, making it way faster to change what type of parts I'm working on, rather than having to take vices on and off a table or move things around depending on what type of parts I'm trying to run.
Did you listen to the incremental podcast the other day where they were talking about parts loading versus pallet slash fixture loading?
No, I haven't listened to that one.
So basically, what they said, and this makes sense to me, is they're like, sometimes the easiest to use technology isn't the highest performance technology.
Oh yeah,
And and part loading can be super difficult to get right. It can be super difficult to learn. You can run into a lot of problems, but once you really get it nailed down, there's a lot of benefits for you. For example, not having to make a custom fixture every time do a new product run.
yeah,
And if a part goes bad, only one part goes bad instead of a whole bunch of them.
yeah,
Which
yeah,
basically that is all to say, part loading is attractive to me more so than fixture loading or pallet loading. But yes, I
yeah,
understand there are times where your pallet is your part.
yeah, and just like there's no such thing as one CNC machine that can do all jobs, there's no one type of automation that'll work for all parts.
Very true.
The closest I've seen to a one size fits all solution is the Aroa palette system that I saw. It was a Saunders video. It was like an hour and it was over an hour long of a shop that moved from California out to I think Nebraska or something. They had a couple Grobes and they had a fleet of brothers, and but they really liked the Aroa system. And what I liked about their system is it's kind of like what I'm talking about with the Haas, where you can change out the whole plate
Yeah.
or the whole table. Except it was with the Aroa palette system, it was a lot more compact, and you could actually have sub plates. So you could change out the whole plate, or you could put a plate in, and then you could put another thing on top of it. And so you could kind of have sub. You could divide it out into smaller pieces depending on what you were doing. And for 5-axis work in particular, it seemed very very cool because you could have a different stack up. Because if you're running a big part in a Grobe, you might use the whole thing versus you could run a platter that can hold 4 small parts all in one go, and the robot can change it all, which is really cool. And so just automation in general, like I want to dip my toes into it more. I want to be able to have my machines run without me physically present. And the more I can do to make reliable processes that would be easier to automate and less human intervention, the better. And whatever route that takes, I have no allegiance to any one method. So they all have positives and negatives.
Well, and the right thing for your shop may be, you have one big, table swapping pallet system, but then right next to that, you've got a robo drill with a FANUC arm, and
Yeah, I really, I ever since I've seen the Aroa pallet feeding two brother Speedios on either side, like that's like a dream setup that I want to have at some point. Just because I think it would just be insane productivity that I could offer to someone, and I would love that. But I gotta figure out. I got a new machine coming. It's gonna open some more doors. I'm gonna hopefully find some more customers, and I gotta hang on to my good reputation that I have right now with my first customer.
yeah.
In fact, ironically, I've kind of joked that I need to get some people fired at that company so they can go spread the word that I exist. So they can go to other companies
uh,
and be like, oh yeah, there's this one machine shop we used and we really like their parts. Because talking to my dad and a couple other people, some of the best growth they have is people changing jobs, getting into a new
Interesting.
getting into a new company, and then being like, oh yeah, there's this shop I used and they're really good. If we need to get some parts made, I highly recommend them. And then they start using them, and that's kind of one way that word can get around.
All right, so this is what you do. You get on LinkedIn, you find all the people. You don't want the people who are fired. You want the people who find a better job and go somewhere else.
There
You
you go.
find those people and then you apply them to jobs or just stick recruiters on them. And that way they'll go to bigger, better companies and bring you more business.
There you go.
It's the perfect business plan.
Yeah, help them find good work so they can find me good work.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but anyways, got all that. Got the inside of the shop pretty much cleared out for the most part, and I've started working on all the SolidWorks modeling of where everything's going to go in the shop. And
SolidWorks,
SolidWorks, yep,
not Fusion.
not Fusion,
Why are you doing it in SolidWorks? What is
because I
this? Like
because I have it
2014?
because I have it, and okay. For the design side of things, I love SolidWorks. I will take SolidWorks over Fusion any day if I'm doing design work, and that's just because that's what I worked in for about 5 years. I'm very comfortable in it, and I'm very fast in it. I'm getting better at Fusion, but my comfort zone is SolidWorks still.
I'm
So
probably still faster design wise in Inventor because that's what I used for a decade or whatever before Fusion.
yeah, yeah, but those are closer related, so there's probably more overlap than there is than
Between
between that.
Fusion and Inventor, oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. SolidWorks SolidWorks does some stuff better and Fusion does some stuff better. Like I've done design in both, And there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So if I'm working for anything that's like a third party file, SolidWorks or Fusion, hands down. If it's a step model, anything like that, the direct modeling features that you can do in Fusion where you can just edit things on the fly, it's awesome.
Yep,
But SolidWorks, when it comes to large assemblies in particular, I haven't found anything that does large assemblies better than SolidWorks.
agreed. And configurations.
Yes, although they did bring configurations to Fusion.
I heard that. I haven't played with them at all, but I have heard that.
Yeah, they did that recently, and I want to play with them because I've seen some cool videos of people setting up fixturing in their machine. And if I'm going to do 5-axis machining when I get my machine, I'd like to build up all the configurations of all the different vices and different setups I can have on it. That way I can load the parts in and stick them in my stock and have it calculate all that stuff on its own.
What are you doing for work holding on your new machine?
We've bought a we've bought one 3-inch self-centering vise from Haas to start out with an adapter plate.
Okay. So you're not going with any sort of 0 point.
Not yet. We got to get comfortable on it and figure out what makes the most sense. I'm trying to get the least amount of money spent to get up and running before I figure out. I would like to go with a 0 point system. The only reason I'm not jumping into that head first is because if I put the VersaBuilt system on it at some point, depending on how soon that happens, I'm probably not going to put a VersaBuilt on top of a 5-axis quick change pallet or quick change system.
Because it'll be like 96 inches tall.
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be way too tall. And so that's the if I had to complain about the VersaBuilt system in any way, shape, or form, it would be how thick
Yeah.
their bases are.
It's chunky.
Yeah. They've got a thinner one, which they say takes an inch or two of total height out, which is not nothing, but they're still pretty big.
Yeah. I right now the two things I need to improve on the most are metrology equipment and work holding.
Yeah.
And literally both of these things, there are problems that the only way you solve them is by throwing money at them. Like
Yes.
you can't really DIY yourself out of these or out of those. Like you
No.
just spend money. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm just waiting until I have money to spend. I'm not I'm not sure which I'll spend money yet on first. Probably metrology because and actually I am getting a flux vice. He
That'll be
was
good.
oh, what is his first name? His last name is Robertson. I don't remember his name. He was on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Robinson or Robertson. Well, Mr. Robertson is sending me a flux vice so
Ken.
that I can show it off on Ken. Thank you. He's sending me a flux vice so I can show it off on my Instagram account. And I didn't know this. Did you know those were Saunders Machine Works plate compatible?
I didn't. I actually reached out to him and asked him.
They're direct mount. I'm not sure they were until he took over it, but that is at least something he added, I think.
Yeah. That's what I was hoping for. I didn't see it on his website. I didn't look too hard, but I didn't see it plastered anywhere. It at least stood out. But
Yeah. I don't think I need a 0 point if I can just hook it up with the two bolts and some pins.
well, the advantage of the flux work holding system, and that's a system that now that it's coming back, I want to, especially when I get a new machine. I've got two pretty big vices, especially for a Tormach on my Tormach, and I'm probably going to end up moving one, if not both vices, over to the Haas, and I would like to replace them with a smaller vice. And the vice that I had my eyes on was the flux work holding vice because I can, if I'm going to be doing smaller parts on the Tormach, having smaller vices where I can fit multiple pieces per vice in a smaller area, it'll just increase the productivity and my walkaway time from that machine.
Yeah,
So
the flux vices do have one problem, and that is first ops. They're a really good second op vice, but they don't really have a good solution for first ops.
They yes and no. The best solution I've seen for them so far has been to drill and tap for mighty bite and basically treat them like a Saunders vice.
Oh, or what I've seen is you put Talon grips in. You basically make soft jaws with Talon grips, which are the
Yep.
little.
Oh yeah, sorry, not mighty bites.
Well, they are a Mighty
Talon.
Bite product.
Yeah, yeah, they're a mighty bite product, but the talons, the solid blocks that have the yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's
Okay,
that
we're on the same page.
yeah, just like what Saunders does. In his so
But then you have to have like a different set of jaws for every size of material.
yes and no. Like I said, the one that I saw is he had spacing where you could adjust the talon grips to whatever size of material you're trying to hold on to. With the downside being that you don't really have any parallels under it. You're always grabbing on by the very edge.
Yes, which for op one is fine.
Yeah,
That's what I would do anyway.
yeah. So I don't think it's a horrible system. I would love to see hard jaws you could buy, but I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Well, I think the problem is they don't like the Vice doesn't have a huge amount of travel. It's not like a normal Vice where the moving jaw can go 4 inches or 6 inches back and forth.
I
I
don't
think you
think
get like an
there's
inch of travel or something like that.
yeah, but I think you can get more than that out of it if you need it. I could be wrong, but I think you can.
I think he's limited by the bolts that he's using as the vice screw, and he was saying he can't find one that is like has threads all the way down it.
Okay.
Now he could get it made, but I don't think he's there
Okay.
yet.
That's fair. Because yeah, that would be the only thing that I would say that would take it up a notch is that. But I mean, even then, if the vices or the jaws are some of the quickest changing jaws I've seen on a vice personally. Now I don't have a whole lot of experience with a lot of different vices out there. I'm sure someone at the podcast listening to the podcast is probably screaming. The only other vices jaws that I've seen that were as quick change, I don't remember the brand, but they were on a self-centering deal. They had like a detent, and you could like twist them the opposite direction, and they'd like pop off, and then you could put on a different set.
Well, there's a bunch of options. The all the Lang vices have quick change jaws. And then there's the jaws that have like the dovetails in them.
Yeah,
So like I don't know. I think that's a solved problem already. Now his may be more repeatable than some of those, but
yeah, yeah, because he's got that the 3 point system or the 2 points in the floating ball, something like that. I forget what it's called. The kinematics on it are highly, highly, highly repeatable. Um, and so, and that's something that's really cool.
so the problem is though his jaws are a little bit expensive, just because it's a more complicated part
Mm-hmm.
than normal soft jaws. And like I think by the time you add 6 pairs of soft jaws to like replace all of your different normal sized vices, like you could just get a leg.
Yeah, maybe.
But for op twos, I think it's unbeatable.
Yeah, I just have to play around with them. I'd have to get me a set and just see how they do.
Yeah, I need to play around with them. I'm excited to have one on hand and see how it does. And I'm really excited that it is Saunders Machine Works plate compatible because then I can just pop it off and reconfigure it quick and easy.
Yep.
Right now on my table, I have a mod vice in double station mode and a single mod vice, and my table is very, very, very packed. I I don't know. I would like to go Lang still. I've been I've been wishing I've had it a lot recently.
Yeah. It'll happen. Just give it time. Kind of work for a little bit and make some money, and then you'll find ways to spend it when you start making good money.
Oh
Trust
yeah,
me.
don't worry. I have plenty of ways to spend money. Yeah,
So work on making it, and then you'll find ways to spend it.
yeah. And the metrology stuff is probably going to come first. I think I need a height gauge at bare minimum. I need a gauge block set.
Do you know what we still don't have? No, we have that. We don't have a small granite block and a height gauge.
Oh yeah, I have the surface plate. I do not have a height gauge.
Yeah, I don't have a surface plate or a height gauge. That's something that I want to get, but I don't have. So,
Yeah, even on these parts that I'm about to make, it would be very handy because the part that the camera is sitting on the block as a tripod. This piece of stainless right here is going to become a part that has some tolerances that are like plus or minus 2 thou. And measuring those with calipers isn't really the right way of doing it.
no, no. Which I do have. I do have gauge pins and I do have gauge blocks. None of them are what I would consider high quality. They're all probably sub $200 sets. Um, but they're the most accurate thing we have in the shop for comparing against. And I do have a couple. I have a Mitsutoyu set of digital calipers that I use as well. So those are go ahead.
Sorry, I have really nice calipers. I have a really nice mic. I have a cheap set of gauge pins that is too small for many things. I need to get one size larger of gauge pins,
Hmm.
and that would cover the majority of what I need.
Yeah, I, I I might end up needing a digital bore gauge set
That makes sense.
because I've run a couple parts that have IDs that are a couple tenths on the ID on the lathe, and right now I have the manual bore set where you have to set up a micrometer, lock it, and then put the bore gauge set in it and adjust the dial until it gets to zero. And then when you go and take the measurement, it's a transfer measurement, and you got to see how close to zero you are. And it works, but it takes a lot of skill and finesse to make sure you got a right measurement. And then you second guess yourself like four different times, and you go back and you check it, and it's just a lot of work. And I borrowed a a digital bore gauge set from a different machine shop because I was running like a couple hundred parts with tenths on the ID, and I was like, I am not going to sit in front of this machine and do this one by one. It's going to take forever. And so I asked if I could borrow it, and they said I could. Now, granted, it was like a $3,000 or $4,000 bore gauge set, but it made reading those measurements so quick and easy, and it was just I was like I'm gonna get some of these at some point. It's gonna happen. It's just way too convenient.
Yeah, my goal is to take work where, like, well, one, I'm not going to take work that I can't measure. Maybe
Yeah,
on this next job I'll have to do some stuff that's a little suboptimal with gauge pins and trying to measure to the gauge pin with the calipers and that kind of thing. But like, I'm just not going to take jobs where I need a port gauge because
yeah.
I want to be able to do everything with gauge pins basically.
Well, what one thing that we just did this week is we bought Fusion. We got off the starter license. One, we didn't qualify it because we've passed the revenue point. Two, we only had one more year of it if we didn't buy it. And three, we were getting ready. We're going to need the machinist extension when we get the new machine, anyways. But one of the things that the machining extension offers that I'm going to try to start using is you can inspect parts on your machine. Now, granted, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong with that, and so I fully am aware of all of the problems that can be associated with that. However, you can automate it, and it's going to be way more accurate than I am with the equipment that I have currently. You'd have to get an actual CMM probably, that would be the most accurate thing that you could use, to probably beat that inspection report. Now, granted, you're always going to have to take it off, but like if I get a report back and I get a bunch of values and I check all the values that I can check and they're all within a really close range, I could be pretty confident that the other measurements that are really challenging to check or would be almost impossible for me to check normally, I can be pretty confident that those are going to be dead nuts on if everything else is dead nuts on.
Well, and it's like it takes you from having to check, every part or every 10th part to like, you check the first, you check the 20th, you check the 50th, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then the machine gives you the confidence for all the ones in between.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm going to try to do that. I don't know if Xometry. Well, I don't think they care. Like, as long as their parts are in spec, I don't think they have a preference for how you measure it as long as you document it. At least that's been my experience. They've never yelled at me for my inspection other than it being like not in spec, like the part. I've had that happen once or twice, but other than that, it hasn't been a big deal.
I saw a list somewhere of guidelines. It's like, don't use calipers for parts that are plus or minus a thou, like some
Mm,
fairly common sense stuff.
hmm.
But I don't know if their parts are in spec, like,
Yeah, that's what matters. Oh, speaking of which, I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast. My number one customer, I've gotten 2 reports of parts out of compliance. So my first two reports of problem parts
with of your parts being out of spec.
of my parts being out of spec.
Interesting.
So I'm going to tell you the 2 different ones because this is actually a net positive story more than a net negative story.
Okay.
So the first parts that came in, we had run about 100 of them, and they were a shaft, and they had a 4/10 call out, 3 or 4 tenths call out on one of the diameters. And the report came in and it told us, if I remember correctly, they said the value was supposed to be half inch to 2 tenths over half inch. And I was 5 tenths under their minimum measurement. The print that I had on the part was it needed to be 0.4997 to 0.4994
Interesting.
or 4993, something like that. It was like 4 or 5 tenths window. And so what turns out ended up happening was they changed the print after we had already dropped off the parts. And so
Thanks,
when they
Mr. Customer.
and so they inspected the parts after we had finished them. And what's funny is that the value that they said that they were was right in the middle of the range of that part. And so it was just like, whoo,
Yeah.
we're good. So that was super. That made me feel good that it wasn't my problem that had happened. And then the other problem part that we had was some aluminum parts didn't anodize properly. Turns out it was a supplier material issue. And so there was defects in the material. And so they think I can they were telling me that I should be able to shave the material down past the defects because they're just surface level defects, and then I should be good. I'll clarify, these are aluminum plate parts and I am not touching the top or bottom surface. I'm only profiling the outer
Oh,
profile.
okay.
And so there's surface level defects because the top and bottom are not faced, that facing them would probably fix. And I asked them if that's something I need to plan on doing from here on out. And they said it's a non issue. They said all their vendors do that. They just have that issue happen every once in a while. And they would prefer the cheaper price of me not machining it over me machining it.
It's
So
weird to me that they would anodize just raw extruded aluminum.
they don't. They run a dual action sander over top of them, and so you can't see the defects until it gets anodized. Like, it looks like a uniform surface, but there's something that's in the surface layer,
Like
and they
porosity or
yeah, something. And they said just machining the very top off will take care of it. So And I do remember when I got these parts, or at least I don't remember. Weston remembers that when we got these parts, he made a comment about the surface finish on these parts looked really rough. Whenever he was DAing them and doing the dual action sander, and so those are the parts that had the issue.
Yeah,
So
those are not bad problems to have. All things said and done.
So those are so now we've had our two problems, and both of them problems have one of them was something we couldn't have done. The other one was an issue we weren't even looking for. But now that we know it, we'll be a lot more particular about our material, and that's something that's kind of as we've gotten through this big job. The biggest takeaway that we have is that the material we get from our suppliers is inconsistent from all of our different suppliers. And so we're trying to come up with processes and get with our suppliers to hold their feet to the fire and be like, hey, when we order material, you know, we've ordered stainless bar, for example, we have two big suppliers that are close to us, and we've ordered material from both of them. And we've had material that we order that's, let's just say a 1 inch stainless steel 12-foot bar
Mm-hmm.
of 303 material. We've had it come in looking like bearing rod. We've had it come in and looking like it's cold drawn, and we've had it come in and look like it's a carbon steel, even though it's technically 303. But it's just
Interesting.
like dented or not dented. It's just like it's got that oily film and it's just nasty, and looks like a steel bar instead of a stainless steel bar. And that's been from all the different suppliers around here, and they're like, oh, it just that material came from a different lot, or that material came from a different supplier. And it's like, okay, be that as it may, I have a certain expectation of the material coming in. Sometimes that stuff doesn't matter, but if I have a customer that wants a 1 inch round bar, and I've ordered material from you in the past and it looks like bearing bar, and so I can order 1 inch round, leave it as the stock diameter, and it looks close to the machine surface, or I get material in a week later for the same job and the material is completely different, and now my outer surface looks like crap compared to the turn surface. Like, I don't want to give that to my customer. Like, I know a lot of shops around here do, and the customer I deal with is not that picky, but I am. And I want everyone who gets our parts to look at them and go, they care and the quality's there. And so argument could be made, well, then just turn down all your parts. But the problem is like if I get a shaft that's like 30 inches long and it's got a turn feature on each end, I'm not going to turn down a 30-inch bar. Like, they don't expect me to, and no one does. Like, I don't have a Swiss lathe, and I don't really want to turn it between centers to try to do something like that and have a Chattertown. And so on the smaller stuff, yes, we always try to fully turn anything that's less than 4 or 5 times D diameter, or stick out. Anyways, that's stuff that I've been fighting and trying to improve. And so the two different takeaways that I came from that was, one, we did good on following the prints, and two, we just need to watch our material a little closer.
It sounds like you just need to be more specific on your POs. Like you
Yeah,
need to
that's
find out the right lingo for
lingo.
whatever you want.
Yeah, so we pulled up the old Saunders video where he talked about getting material from suppliers and building email templates and having like this whole like notes field at the bottom. The material will get rejected if da 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 da. And so we've started attaching that to all of our different emails. To whenever we request for quote, it's like material must come in with no dents or scratches. It must come in straight and true. It must come in, you know, clean and not covered in grime, you know.
Yeah, the problem with that is, after they see it twice, they ignore it.
Yes, but then I can turn the material away, and I'm going to try to do that more often. If the material is bad, and I've told them, and we've had this conversation with a couple of our suppliers. Hey, if you have to charge 10% more to meet these standards, it's worth it to us to it's 10%. That 10% in value is worth it to us in the long run. So, and I don't know if 10% is what it would be, but whatever that cost is, as long as it's not unreasonable, would be worth it. So, anyways,
Are
that
you
go ahead.
are you going through companies like, the equivalent of metal supermarkets that's just turning it around and buying it from bigger companies, or are you going to like Ryerson or Alro, or the companies that I don't know if Alro actually makes a metal, but are you going to the larger companies or smaller companies?
They're buying them from metal foundries, so they don't have foundry themselves. So I get a lot of my aluminum through Howard Precision Metals, and they're out of state. So everything that we get from them, they ship in. But they're the cheapest aluminum prices that I've found so far. And then I can get stainless and plastic from Stewart Stainless, and they're a local company. They also offer some laser cutting services, but they do not bend, unfortunately. They do not bend the metal after they laser cut it, and they offer routering surfaces for plastics. And then there's Boyd Metals, and they can do carbon, stainless, aluminum. They have a little bit of everything, but they only carry the most common sizes, and you have to buy full bars. So you can't buy partials unless you get over, I want to say, 3 inches in diameter. Then those you can buy in partial sticks. Um, and then there's Alro, which we haven't used a whole lot because they don't drive to our location. But when we move to our new shop, they will drive out there
Oh, that's
because
nice.
it's a lot closer. So we might start using them. There's another one called, I think, Trident, and they're closer than Howard and offer similar services. I haven't compared prices yet, but they do a lot of aluminum. And there's obviously McMaster and Online Metals. But yeah, I get material from like half a dozen different suppliers, and I'm always on the hunt for the best, most efficient way to get material because we had a job that we redid, and I'd ordered the material on McMaster the first time. And the second time, I had a 12-foot stick that I had bought for a different job, and I had a leftover piece, and I did it out of that stick. And the part was like 20 to 30% cheaper just because of the material.
Yeah, I I've been using Alro a lot for, well, okay, we'll go back a step. For my titanium, American Metal Exchange, spelled with an X exchange, by far the best prices. And I used them, like most of the stuff I made was titanium, so that was most of my material. For my stuff that wasn't titanium, I tend to use Alro a lot because they're close. But today, though, they didn't have what I needed, short of driving down to their other location, which was like an hour and a half away. And I went back to metal supermarkets, which is where I used to buy my metal at my old house. And I forgot how much I liked metal supermarkets. Their prices were a third of Alro's on this piece of stainless. And I think it's mostly because like I needed 6 inches. Like Alro does really well when you get a couple bars, whereas metal supermarkets does really well when you just need a little bit of an offcut.
Yeah.
I used to live within 5 minutes of a metal supermarket, and it was the best thing ever. It's definitely a little bit annoying being more rural, where I can either get it from McMaster or I can drive half an hour to Alro if they have it.
Yeah. Yeah. All my materials, all my metal suppliers are about an hour drive, regardless of which one I choose. So
I guess I'm lucky to have Alro then. It's only half
yeah,
an hour away.
yeah. I've even gotten material from we have a Granger that's relatively close. I've even ordered material from them before.
I've never
Um,
considered Granger.
so they're not really known for material, but they do offer it. It's kind of like poor man's McMaster. So
I mean, Granger isn't always cheap.
no, I know, but just like the the materials. Like if you're going on McMaster for material, like you can usually find something comparable on Granger, and it's usually cheaper. The quality, though, at least the material that I've gotten, and it could, I don't know, I haven't ordered enough material from Granger to figure out all the tricks, but the material I did get from them came in quite warped, so I stopped using them. So, but that's the one nice thing about McMaster is if I've any problem that I've had material from a material perspective, they've taken care of like instantly.
McMaster is such a good company. I
So
had a credit card that had like some fraud and it got declined by McMaster. I called McMaster. They pick up on the first ring. Like they're they're so easy to work with. Their customer service is just so good.
yeah, yeah. There's a reason like everyone under the sun uses them, even though their prices are so high.
Yeah. I
So like,
regret not buying this material that I showed you earlier from them. I got it from Metal Supermarkets, and I was able to go pick it up the same day, but I had to drive 45 minutes each way, and it was like I don't know, probably $40 cheaper than buying on McMaster. And it's like, yeah, $40 is $40, but I would have really liked that hour and a half in my shop.
yeah. Well, if you start getting busy and taking on work, you can make $40 an hour real quick,
Yeah.
and it might be worth it to. I'm getting to the point where like I did some gun stuff here this week because we were kind of slow and in a little bit of a lull. And it was a couple $100 worth of work, but it was a day's worth of work as well. And it was just like, man, like if I was doing 100 of these, yeah, I'd do it for this price all day. But the price that I have to charge for this stuff because it's a one off and you know regular consumers aren't willing to pay the actual labor rate that I really need to be hitting. It's like it's not that appealing. So I do it some, but we're probably gonna as we get busier and busier, eventually it's probably gonna just go away.
Good. I've been
So
telling you to drop that stuff for 60 episodes.
yes, but I never had a need to. It was it was money in the bank at a time when I needed all the money I could get to survive.
It's valid. I can't begrudge you that.
So I never said it's always been kind of the side hustle of the business. If it turned into something like I've seen people who have turned their shops into a niche in the gun space, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
very easily could have happened that way, but we're not that good at marketing and getting our names out, and so it just didn't grow into that. Plus the stress level of working on people's guns, and like it's real, and I would much rather make something from scratch than work on someone's gun.
Yeah, break a tap in the wrong place and
Oh my
could be a
goodness.
$2,000 mistake.
That actually, well, not breaking a tap, but I did actually screw up someone's slide this week, and it was the first slide I've ever messed up something on, and it was basically a tool had pulled out and cut deeper than it was supposed to, and man, I was so mad. And thankfully, the customer was super chill about it, and it was a simple enough fix. I still haven't fixed it yet because he's waiting on his parts. I'm going to modify the parts to fit it, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. But it was just like I don't want that kind of stress. Like that's not a fun stress. I like the stress of working on parts and job shops or my own products, but working on a pre-existing product and modifying it, no matter what it is, it's just not as fun.
Well, and there's just like overhead with firearms. Like, okay, let's say you did become a big yeah, gunsmithing shop, and now all of a sudden you have 10 rifles coming into your shop and going out of your shop every day. Like,
Hmm.
where do you store them? How do you store them safely? Like, how do you make sure none of them get stolen? Like, how do you make sure they go back to the right customers? So, like, there's just overhead that you have to consider, and like lawsuits if you get it wrong.
Yes and no. I think with any business, there's overheads that you could make the arguments for. Like you could make the arguments for Job Shop. Oh, now you got to have all this extra tooling and all this extra work holding, and you can't make anything dedicated, and you got to have a fast turnaround, and yada yada.
Yeah,
Like you could make
fair.
you could make arguments in any direction for any reason why you shouldn't do that. But the thing is if you specialize in something, you're specializing in it for a reason. Usually, the reason is because people don't want to mess with it,
Okay,
and
that's fair.
and then
You're not
and then
wrong.
and then money can be made in that area.
That's true.
So
It's like me. I'm going to go do the small parts with small tools that nobody else wants to do.
exactly,
You know,
exactly. And so you're filling a need, and that's where the best niches are, is areas that are hard for a reason that other people's don't want to mess with them. That's where you can make your most money.
I have a
So
40K spindle. Some guy with a mini mill in his garage has a 6K spindle. I can
yeah,
take stuff that he doesn't. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So that to be said, the gun stuff didn't pan out. It was fun at the time. I'd still have fun doing it if I was making my own products in that space, but I think the job shop gun work is not for me.
Well, that's even like the direction Area 419 went. It's like they
Yeah,
started off with some gunsmithing, and then they came up with their own products, and then they got
yeah,
massive all of a sudden. Yeah.
yeah, and I could see myself doing that more than the job shop space side. Yeah, I'd much rather make a product and sell it than modify a pre-existing product because failure on that side is way more expensive.
Though that might be a really good way to get better at machining really fast when you're when you have to hyper focus and like double, triple, quadruple check your setup before going. Like
Yeah,
eventually you build those habits, and that'll pay itself back off with job shop work.
yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It it does force you to be more cautious, but there's just not enough money in it to go. Like you can't go as fast, and I can't charge as much.
Yeah, you'd have to do like super, 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 super high end stuff.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
start serving the U.S. Olympic team or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And that would be fun.
It would be fun.
That would be fun.
But the guy who's
But
been doing that probably did the low paying job shop stuff for 30 years before he got to do the high end stuff. Like
yeah.
you got to earn
Yeah.
that reputation.
Yeah, and I have guys come in every once in a while and they're like they want a barrel threaded or something and I'll tell them the price and they're like, "Oh, but you already got the machine and the equipment. It's only going to take you like 15 minutes." And I'm
Yeah,
like, "Yeah, I had to pay for that machine and equipment and all my experience. Like it's not the time. It's everything that it took to get me to the point where I could do it that fast." And so and even still stuff goes wrong and I end up taking like nothing goes as fast as it should on like onesie twosie items.
two things that customers will never understand is the the opportunity cost of other things that you could be doing is baked into their prices, as
Mhm.
is the risk.
Yeah.
Both of
Yeah.
those are legitimate, real things that businesses have to deal with,
Mhm.
and somebody has to pay for it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the businesses that don't pass those costs on to their customer go out of business.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's stuff I'm figuring out, and it's exciting. We're probably going to end up as we continue to grow, and I can continue to find more customers. We're going to probably start turning down more and more types of work that we've done in the past, which is just a natural progression that we've been hoping for. And so it's exciting, but I also don't like telling people no.
I re-listened to our first episode the other day.
Oh man.
One, it was not nearly as bad as I thought it was. It was going to be.
Okay.
I was
That's
happy
good.
about that, actually. I was pleasantly surprised. Two, would you like to know what we talked about?
Probably the exact same conversation.
We talked about Zometry, like if I should do Zometry or not. That was like the main topic. We talked about cheeky tools, though we didn't know it was called cheeky tools then. I can't believe I had that idea 60 episodes ago. but we
Oh,
talked about
really?
that in the first episode of our podcast.
No way.
Then we talked about you niching down.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
It's the cycles of podcasts and job shops and businesses.
yeah. Oh, I didn't realize that we were doing this podcast when I launched the Not for Climbing. I thought this
Yeah.
podcast was all post Not for Climbing.
No, no, we did this all through
Yeah,
the Not for
man, we've
Climbing.
been doing this longer than I thought we have.
Yeah. Yeah, it was still, gosh, what was the, you had just done your pry bars, or your choose your own adventure pry bars,
Yeah,
for
the
lack
parametric pry bars. So I would
parametric
have
pry
been in this
bars.
house. I would have been in this shop, I think, because I didn't have the new machine very long in my old shop,
Yeah.
and I was finishing up the pry bars as we were showing the house. Like we were showing the house with a mill running in the garage.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would have had to have been at this house, but yeah, I don't know. I was listening to the old business of machining episodes because I'm out of podcast, and I was like, what does our first episode sound like?
That's cool.
Sure enough.
So,
Do you know
no,
what
it's,
they?
go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you know what they were talking about in the very first business of machining episode, or one of the first ones? I don't remember.
No idea.
Does the name Linda sound familiar to you? Do you remember who that is?
No.
It's a reoccurring off-screen character in the Business Machine podcast. They were talking about grinding Rask blades on the mill. That was like the first
Oh,
episode,
yeah.
and Linda was
Yeah,
like
okay.
their applications engineer that they talk about for like the next 4 years.
Yes. Yes. I do remember that. Okay, yeah.
I
Yes.
was I was amazed that they were talking about that, and I don't remember if it was the
Well,
first episode, but it was within the first four for sure.
and what's funny is that he is still grinding them, and then in one of his most recent videos within the last month or two, he was grinding them on the Brother Speedio and had to get the precision
Yes.
package to add an extra decimal to get rid of the ripples in his blades, because he was moving grinding over to his Speedio. So
I
that's
I think I need to play with smoothing settings on my machine. I have noticed on the cubes, I'm getting artifacts in like the same place. And I thought it was coolant,
oh
but I rearranged the coolant, and now I
so
don't know what it is, but it could be smoothing.
Haas has 3 smoothing levels. Have you watched the Haas tool tip of the day on it?
Yeah, it's like G187. You can do 1, 2, or 3, and then also
Mm-hmm.
specify a rounding radius.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's my guess.
Yeah, and I have turned it to roughing mode for the roughing part of it, and I don't think my post changes it back. Do you know when does the Haas control cancel the G187 and go back to the default mode?
No idea. I haven't paid attention to that at all.
I Yeah, I don't know if it does it at program end or what.
I know it doesn't. I say I know. I don't think there's any point on the lathe that the lathe would do anything like that. I don't think so,
Why not?
because
It
it's
makes
turning.
moves.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
but the tool moves.
yeah, but when you're doing an adaptive toolpath, the problem is you're coming to a corner, and it's just how sharp or how quick it takes the corner. There's no equivalent of that on the lathe. The lathe is turning, and the tool is moving in a linear line, so it's not like it. I don't think it does any kind of moves that it might. Now that I say that, it might.
Yeah,
I
because
don't
if
know.
I don't know, for example, if you were turning up to a shoulder and going up the shoulder, you come along your z-axis and then you go up on your x.
Yeah,
It would
maybe.
round or not round that corner. Now, is it going to be as dramatic of an effect as a on a mill? No, unless you're like doing a zigzag or something.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue on the lathe, but I will check,
Or
because
like
there's
a
because
sphere or something, or a free form space. It might make a difference.
it might. The only place, because like the only place that really shows up on the Haas is, I believe, during adaptive toolpaths, or does it show up everywhere?
No, it's everywhere. It's all
It's
motion
every
control.
all motion control. Okay, yeah, I don't know then. I don't know if the
It
Lathe does
is.
that or not. Anyways,
That's something I need to play with. I tried changing tools. I tried changing the coolant around. I tried slowing down my spindle speed. It looks like galling, but I don't know where or why, and why it's always on the same side of the cube.
it's probably because it's just a lead in, lead out or issue or something where it's just diving into the material too far.
All of my tool paths on this lead in from outside the cube and lead out from outside the cube.
No idea then.
Yeah, it's weird. I like I said, I haven't been able to explain it or change it. None of the changes I do.
Affect it. Hmm. Fair enough.
So I don't know. It's weird. It doesn't look bad. Like it's fine. It's just the rest of the cube is like mirror, and then there's a section that's like not quite mirror.
Gotcha. So now that you've gotten a taste of the Haas OM, just out of curiosity, if you could sell your Tormach and get another machine to replace it, and you had a budget of say $100,000, we'll keep it somewhat reasonable.
$100,000. Okay,
We'll keep it somewhat reasonable. That gives you a lot of options.
that does give me a lot of options. I don't know. I guess is the answer. I would probably go with a drill tap style machine with a high speed
Okay.
spindle. So like a
Okay.
Speedio with a 30K spindle. I'm pretty sure they make those.
Oh, I know they do 24. They might do 30.
I don't know. I haven't looked that deep, but something along those lines, I think, is where I would go. I for 100,000, you're not looking at 5 axis yet.
Unless you could. Are you still interested in the Penta 5-axis machine?
It's definitely. I need to see one in person and play with one.
Those things
It's
have gone
just.
like dark. I don't know anything about what's happened in like the last 3 to 6 months.
I think they're out in beta testing. This. I keep getting emails from a sales guy.
Do you know anyone on Instagram that is currently beta testing that would actually
Nope.
show anything?
None of my friends have one. They need to just send me a machine for free, Pin the Machine Co. Then I'll show it off for you.
There you go.
Yeah, because that would be a really good machine for what I'm doing.
Yeah,
But
because I've
honestly,
thought. Go ahead.
another option would actually be a CM with a trunnion.
Yeah,
Because that would be, I think, around 70, maybe 80K. Leave me some money for lane work holding tool holders. I need tool holders. I need tool holders and collets desperately. I only have 10 tool holders right now. One of them is being occupied by a gauge pin as like my master tool, um, which I need for recalibrating the tool center and stuff occasionally. So I have 9 tool holders, and I probably have a grand total of like 7 collets. I have a set of like super like dirt cheap Chinese collets from like Amazon that I used for work holding in a DIY collet block kind of setup I had, and I had to break into those to get a collet for my mill. So yeah, I need money. I have a million things I need to spend money on right now. Tooling will probably or tool holders will probably be the first thing I spend money on
yeah.
because I have that 20 tool ATC and I have 9 tool holders.
As you get job shopping, like if you start taking more and more job shopping jobs, you're gonna find that you'll never have enough tool holders.
Yeah. Though with the way the Haas controller is set up, I don't think I'm going to store tools inside their tool holders like with the offset. Like I think I'm going to be touching it off every time I load a new tool.
Well, yes, but you have to have the gauge length. So that's one thing that I saw about the tool tags that I don't remember if it was Pearson or Saunders,
Yeah,
but
they write the gauge length on it.
they write the gauge length on it. That way, when they load them in, even if they have to retouch them off, you know the value, the starting value, because you have to measure them every single time you put them in there too. or get like a rough length?
Yeah. So funny story about that. I, I got my tool setter set up. It was working, and then I went to touch off some more tools, and I wanted to put in the diameter. I learned how to use wear comp and tool diameter comp this week with some of my parts.
Mm-hmm.
But for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why I couldn't convince my probe to measure the diameter anymore. It used to work, but like I couldn't get it to work again. So some of the tool set off modes, it just asks you what tool you want to measure. Some of
Mm-hmm.
the tool modes, it asks you for a rough length
Mm-hmm.
of the tool. I was measuring the length from the end of the tool holder, not from the spindle. I spent probably 4 hours trying to figure out how to make the stupid probe work again. I reloaded the probing macros. I did all kinds of things. But yep, I just was not measuring the tool from the right spot.
Gotcha.
It's like that was dumb.
Gotcha. Yeah, you got to measure it from the spindle.
Yep, nope, not just the end of the tool holder,
Yep.
which the machine would totally know the length of.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's
So,
whoopsies.
was it crashing into it?
No, so this is what was giving me the problem. The alarm it gave me was probe open,
Okay.
which is not a insightful
So,
description of what was going wrong.
if
And
you have
that's
two
why I thought it was the macros.
if you have too short of a tool, does it throw that error? Does it have like a minimum tool length?
Yes. So I think it's the I don't even know what it bases the number off of. But yes, if the tool is too short, it freaks out.
Gotcha. So if you have a tool that's probably under an inch or two, it might be like 2 inches or something. Like basically an ER call, like a short ER collet size minus like a half inch. Like
Yeah.
that would probably be where it's set, somewhere in that range.
So yeah, I know for most of my tools the gauge length is around 3 inches, and I was typing in 0.25 and 0.75,
Yeah, I
and it was
imagine it
smart
has to be at
enough.
least. Yeah,
Yeah, it was going. That's not right. Something's wrong here, and it was
yeah,
right. It was an operator error.
that's good.
So
Good thing you didn't crash it.
yeah, that. Thank you, Tormach. Thank you, Haas, or Renishaw. It's probably Renishaw. Thank you, Renishaw, for preventing me from crashing my machine, but also write better error messages.
So on the next gen controllers, when that error message pops up, you can go to the alarm screen and it has a whole description on what went wrong.
I found the description, but it doesn't specify that. Oh, you typed in too short of a gauge length.
Oh, gotcha.
So I literally spent hours like just trying to get that to work, and then I gave up and just ran the part without it and just used wear comp. Like I didn't actually need it for what I was doing, but I wanted to learn it, and then figured it out. But now I can measure the diameter tools again.
That's good. The other thing I was going to ask you, which I forgot now, I had a really good question I was going to ask you. I hate it when I lose that a
Was it
good thought.
about the OM?
It was. It was a problem you were facing, and I had a question about it, or something you were struggling with at one point.
Uh, was it setting my zero? Oh, was it offset speed backwards?
Yes,
Yes.
that's what it was. Yes.
More just dumb operator error on my account. So I learned that the way I offsets on the Tormach is backwards of how you do it on the Haas.
Mm-hmm.
So on the Tormach, right on the home page in the controller, there's a display. It's your DRO, and on that DRO, you can shift your work coordinate system, like right there from the DRO. You can just go in. If it thinks you're at 1 inch, you can hit 1 inch plus one, and it'll go, okay, you're at 2 inches. On the Haas, you offset the position of the work coordinate system relative to G53, your machine coordinate system. And basically, TLDR, it works backwards. And so I was moving all of my coordinates backwards of where I wanted them to.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I spent an hour or two chasing my tail trying to figure out why I couldn't get this fixture dialed in. And it was because
Mm-hmm.
I was setting my work coordinate system backwards. I even, on my Tormach, I have written on my machine, because I never ever remember it. It's like to make part thicker, add to Z. Or no, to make part thicker, subtract from Z's for the Tormach. To move part left, you do whatever to X. To move part, and Y, you do this to Y. I have it written on my machine. I took that, I copied it to the Haas because I knew I wasn't going to remember on the Haas, and it is exactly backwards. So now I look at my cheat sheet that I have sharpie to the Haas, and I do the opposite, which it's already kind of backwards because it's like, well, am I moving the part? Am I moving the
The
cut?
cord, yeah.
Yeah, and so
The, the the
yeah,
best way that I found to think about it is that on the Tormach, this is the way I think of it personally. On the Tormach, you're moving the coordinate system with your perspective being on where the spindle's currently located. Versus the Haas, when you're moving the coordinate system, you're moving it from the work coordinates perspective.
yes.
And so from an operator perspective, it makes more sense to move it not based on the spindle, but based on your work coordinate itself. And so if you want it to be thicker, you add. If you want it to be thinner, you subtract. If you want it to go right, you add. If you want it to go left, you subtract, and so on and so forth. And so,
Can you
but on
write
the
this on a sticky note and send me a picture of it so I can transfer it to my machine? Because right now I'm literally looking at my cheat sheet and doing the opposite, and I still go the wrong direction sometimes.
yeah. Well, I know that on the lathe in particular, it's really nice because if I want to make the part larger, I add. If I want to make it smaller, I subtract, and that works on if you're doing the ID or the OD. And so, um, it just the system makes a lot more sense from an operator perspective and updating things. Which that's another thing that I found on the Tormach. I almost never touch the work coordinate systems or the tools once they're set up. But on the Haas lathe, I'm constantly going into the offsets tabs and tweaking things. Part of that is because I'm trying to hold tense.
Yeah.
And basically, the mindset that me and Weston have developed is if I've got a new tool and I take a cut on a part, I want that to be as close to that part's value that it is. Once I've got that dialed in, so like for example, if my tool reads 00, like I've touched it off the tool setter, and I take a cut, and I'm a thou or two big or a thou or too large, and it's a part that I'm going to be running a bunch of, then I will adjust the offset on the program until I'm within a couple tenths. From that point, I will update the wear of the tool to account for that. And the idea being that anytime I rerun an old program, I want it to be really close I want the tool to be cutting really close to what it should be cutting. I only want to add a tenth or two to my tool, and as it wears, that'll eventually grow. Like it'll grow as that tool wears out. But I want the program to always be as close as possible to 0 whenever it makes that cut.
So basically, you're accounting for deflection and then a average tool undersizedness, if it's a mill,
Yes.
tool at least.
Yes.
And then you're just doing wear. I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a little different in on the lathe because how deep you take your final cut plays a huge factor in how much it moves.
Yes, that makes sense.
And so we've started doing semi finishing and finishing passes, and that's made everything a lot more consistent. Because before we were just, I mean, it's part of learning to be a better machinist. Before we would take roughing passes down, and then the finishing pass. Sometimes our roughing passes we weren't coming down to the same thickness, and so or we would take a finishing pass with one tool, or we would rough with one tool and then a finishing pass with another tool, And so what we've started doing is that we do a semi-finishing pass, which is a pre-finish pass with our finisher, and then we take another finishing pass at a known depth, and that's made it a lot more consistent from part to part.
I even do that on my mill.
So,
I have a question for you. So wear comp.
mm-hmm,
Let's say we're just doing a circular bore here.
mm-hmm,
The wear comp is on the diameter,
mm-hmm,
correct? So let's say if I measure it and I'm a thou out,
mm-hmm.
I would change the wear by
Are you larger or smaller?
the part is undersized, it needs to be larger. The hole is undersized, it needs to be larger.
Okay. You
I
would
would make it like negative one thou, right?
you
Because
would
that would be half a thou on each side, but then you're also taking half a thou on each side of your bore.
so if I don't know on the mills, I know this on the lathe. I don't know this on the mills. On the lathe, anytime you take out a thou, it's taking it off of the diameter, not the radius. So if I'm a thou over, it's not like, or if I'm one thou over, it's not like I set my wear to be a half a thou. I set my wear to be a thou, and it accounts for the fact that it's taking it off the diameter, not the radius. So I don't need to half it. But on the mill,
On the mill, you've got two, like, maybe I shouldn't have said, well, yeah, no, it does make sense to call it a circle. Yeah. You're doing a circular feature, you have two diameters
mm-hmm,
because you got the diameter of the tool and then the diameter of the
the
feature.
bore, yeah,
And even if it's a square pocket, you still are cutting on both sides.
mm-hmm,
So it like cancels out, right? Where if you're a
yes,
thou undersized, you do a thou of wear.
mm-hmm.
Okay, just making sure. I was playing with it, and I don't know what was going on, but on one of the features, I just wasn't seeing it make as much of a difference as I thought it would. And yes, I made sure that it was cutting in the right mode.
So you set it to where, or do you set it to So there's like three different modes or four different modes. There's in computer, in controller, wear, and inverse wear.
I was setting it to in control because I want to measure the diameter of my tool and then also comp that with wear.
Okay. Okay.
Because
That's okay.
I think that'll give me like the best first attempt accuracy.
I'm gonna reach out to our listeners' knowledge and maybe you as well, AJ. Do you have a solid definition for the difference between in controller and wear?
Where, yes. So in controller, it puts the center line of the fusion. Fusion puts the center line of that tool right on the edge of your part.
Mm-hmm.
And then your controller offsets it by the wear plus half the tool diameter, the tool radius.
Well, if you do in controller, does it include wear?
Yes, it does. I'm 85% sure that it does. Does it not?
Because
Is this my
that's why
problem?
that's why I think where is the other option because it's in the controller. Because I think in controller is just the diameter you tell it, and then where is the diameter plus or minus your wear value.
Well, I know with wear, it uses the diameter of the tool that you have in Fusion plus the wear. I
I'm gonna look
don't,
at.
now that you say it, yeah, I wasn't seeing the wear make a difference when I was in controller, so it might have just been looking at the diameter of the tool. But I thought it would do both. I thought I added them. I saw some reference on like a practical machinist post, but I didn't dig that deep into it. And I just assumed.
Because in controller, I think it just goes off the measured value of the tool, and where is what the user can do to adjust it.
So you're saying it doesn't add them?
So in controller doesn't add them, but where does is
Okay,
what I'm
so
saying.
where ignores the diameter you have in your machine? I know that for sure.
No, does it?
Yes.
Mm,
I was very confident
then,
about that. I'm a little less confident now, but
then what's inverse wear?
inverse wear is you type in a positive number to make the tool smaller. It's literally just a negative sign.
Okay, I'm gonna pull this up real quick and see what it says. All right. In
You
controller, tool compensation is not calculated, but rather G50, G41, G42 codes are output to the and
you can tell we're an hour and a half into the episode because we're
yeah,
googling definitions.
yep. Okay, so where works as if in controller was selected, but also outputs G51. Okay, lets the machinist tool operator adjust the tool wear in the machine tool by entering the difference in the tool size as a negative number. So yeah, so in controller does not look at the wear value.
I have unplugged my headphones. 1 second. I'm back. I missed anything that you may have said?
You're okay. I didn't say anything. I was just reading some more. That's what
Uh,
it sounds like.
so maybe look up the
Hmm.
G54 or
41,
G42 or
40,
whatever it was.
41, 42. That's just which side of the line your tool cuts on.
Yeah, but does if you look that up on Haas, does it say if it takes into account wear and diameter, or
Well, both in controller and wear uses G41, G42. They both use the same codes.
do they get like a p value or something?
They might.
We're gonna get so many messages on Instagram about this.
That's okay. I enjoy hearing from
please,
listeners.
please send them to me.
I enjoy hearing from people.
It would make sense if I wasn't seeing the wear change. Like I didn't think it was making a difference.
It might not have been.
It might not have been if I was doing it wrong. Because yeah, I had Fusion set to in control. Now I did try turning on wear, and it was unhappy that I had now my air compressor's going off. Where was unhappy that I had a value inside the diameter field because it threw me
Okay.
an error like, hey, your tool has a 1/4 inch of wear on it.
So is it separate fields on the Haas for you?
Yeah, yeah, I have a diameter field and a wear field.
Okay, so I do too. Hmm. I don't know. I know that I've tried using in controller on the Tormach, and that was a bad idea.
What did it do?
It
Oh, it
would
probably tried to cut on the center line.
no, it would try to do that, but it would kept giving me gouging errors. Anytime it would do a lead in, lead out in different areas, it would say part is going to gouge, and so it wouldn't run it.
Your
And
lead-in has to be a big enough diameter.
yeah, but it was just like, why can't you calculate that, you stupid controller?
Yeah, that's a thing. That was even a thing on the lasers I used to run at my last job. If you didn't give it a lead-in, they would air out.
Yeah, which I understand that, but like, I feel like there's, I don't know, I don't know. It's not an issue whenever you do it in controller or in computer, but it's an issue when you do it in controller. And that gouging thing just drove me up a wall. And it was like I would select the same toolpath, and the only thing I would change is the in controller or in computer, and like it was the same in theory. It was the exact same toolpath, but the controller was like, I can't do that. It's like I know you can do it, so I don't know. Maybe I'm a bad machinist. Maybe I don't understand it fully.
One thing I did learn in looking into all this, I watched a video that was put out by Autodesk. I have ran into issues in the past where, like, even on the maze coins that I did, I ran into this issue where the trace toolpath will not do what I want it to do, but the 2D contour toolpath will. But obviously, the 2D contour toolpath doesn't cut on the center line. But I could have just put my toolpath in control with a 0 diameter on my Tormach, and it totally would have worked.
Hmm.
I don't remember where it was where we were fighting. It was Trace does not let you establish like a cut inside this boundary circle, and 2D
Oh yes.
contour does.
Yeah.
And so on all my coins, like the artwork was a square, but I only needed the circle, and it just air cut for I don't know 25% of the time or whatever. I could have set the compensation to in control and just not had that problem.
Yeah. Or you could have done what I said, and you could have projected the surface, and that would have cut it down.
I tried that, but that's a manual process. It wasn't automatable. So I would
Oh,
have had to
you
post every coin.
okay? You couldn't just refresh it. Hmm.
Well, and the way I have my program set up is it will post me, 20 coins or however many I tell it to.
Oh, that's what it was.
I'm sure I could have refreshed, hit post, and then refreshed and then hit post.
Okay, that's annoying.
Another fun quirk. So I'm doing the fidget cubes in the background too, and the way I have it set up, I have four different work coordinate systems, each one with its own cube with the design randomly generated. Here's a fun little quirk. The way you post through the API is not done through NC programs. It's like it just posts. Like you don't get a set options. You tell it which post, and it just posts with the default options. Sometimes when you post it, it will do like all of tool one and then all of tool two. Sometimes it'll do tool one, tool two, tool one, tool two, tool one, tool two. And I have no idea why.
Do you still set up the program properly, right?
Yeah.
So, are you doing multiple work offsets, or
Yes, I have four work coordinate systems.
but is it all in one deal?
It's four setups.
So it's four separate setups, or it's the same setup for with the set that says, if you were looking at it on your deal, would it be one folder of all the toolpaths, and then you would go into your setup and say post to multiple coordinate systems, or is it four separate?
It is four separate setups because the engraving tool path or pass is different for all of them.
Okay,
So if I wanted to fix this issue and make sure it worked right every time, I would need to break it up into 8 setups and have the first 4 being the roughing and the second 4 being the finishing.
gotcha.
It's just
That's
very
weird.
weird that it's inconsistent. I just don't understand why it's inconsistent.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway,
I was gonna say, because if you're doing them all as like it's all the same setup, and you're just doing it in multiple locations, there is an option on that last page to do it by tool, by operation, or by, I forget what, there was three options. I don't remember what the other option is, but
but
or no, is
I don't have NC programs.
you don't need NC programs for that because it's in the setup.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like when you're posting multiple operations and it's not using multiple coordinates, it is multiple coordinates, but it's multiple setups. You can reorder tools with a checkbox when you're posting the NC code.
Like you can in patterns.
Yes, but in when you're doing it all inside one setup and you're posting that same lines of codes in multiple locations, in that toolbox you can say keep it in order, or maintain the tool order per location, or do all the different locations with the same tool before you change it. Like you can change those settings without worrying about your NC.
Okay. Yeah, I can't do that here because every setup has to be different. So
Yeah. Which another cool trick that I've learned recently is, now that I have the machining extension, it doesn't matter. But for anyone else who's listening, and you included AJ, if you can go add in the old flow toolpath, and then you can take apart and you can add a modeled chamfer. You can select the face of that modeled chamfer and do the old flow toolpath if it's like on a weird surface, and you can have it do one pass, and it'll act like a chamfer tool following any weird geometry.
interesting. Okay.
And so I didn't have the deburr toolpath, which basically does the exact same thing.
Yes, the deburr toolpath is awesome.
Yes. But I figured out a way to do that with the old flow toolpath. basically the exact same thing, with the only difference being is that you had to model the chamfer that you wanted it to cut, and then you had to make sure that it was going like you can go either in the U or the V, I think is how they set it up. And so as long as you're going in the correct direction and you're doing one pass along that area, you can do as thin a chamfer as you want, and it'll come in and it'll basically deburr, and it can follow all these crazy paths while doing it.
I have a template set up where it is a contour toolpath with a ball mill that only does angles between like 40 and 50 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And that automatically finds regular 45-degree modeled chamfers and chamfers them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I'm ever going to put a chamfer mill in the OM. It's like just faster to do it with an eighth inch ball mill.
Depends on how big of a chamfer, but yeah.
Yeah. Or the time savings is not significant and it saves me a spot in the ATC.
Yeah. So I use a regular chamfer on everything unless it's an irregular surface, and then I use a ball mill.
That makes sense.
Just because I use that chamfer tool on pretty much everything, and anytime I'm tapping a hole, I have to cut a big relief, and I don't want to do that with the ball mill. So, which by the way, if you're going to start doing geometry parts and you're going to start tapping holes, they recommend. Did they send you that chart on how deep? Okay, they sent us a chart, and I don't know if they just send out random help tips and tricks things, emails or something. I don't know, but we printed it out because we thought it was very useful. Anytime you're drilling and tapping a hole for geometry, their standard practice is to chamfer between 5 thou and 30 thou larger than the major diameter of the tap.
I may
So,
need to start modeling holes on the major diameter, like threaded holes.
mm, I just add the models. I just add the chamfers in.
Yeah, I know you can do it either way, but it works better for thread milling, which I do a lot of anyway, and it works better to get like make sure the chamfers are right. It should like if it's a part you're designing, it shows interference is better. Like I've always drawn it on the minor diameter just because it's like that's what you drill it with.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it might actually make more sense to do it on the major diameter.
Yeah, I don't know. Hadn't thought of that.
Because if you like go through
Well,
the uh,
here's one thing. Here's one thing I'll say to that. If you're doing job shop work, you would have to delete out and add in or adjust all the tapped hole sizes in your model, and eventually that'll get old, and you'll just start adding in chamfers, or because adding in a chamfer is really easy. Modifying a hole, you can modify an STL, and you can change the diameter, but then you're like, okay, do I need to add 5 thou to it, 10 thou? Like, how do I get it to the major diameter? You'll be doing the similar type of math.
doesn't the step tool or not the step tool, the press pull tool let you do it in diameter?
I think it's only from where it's starting. It might be diameter. I haven't messed with it for diameters. I know for surfaces, it's just a distance.
Yeah.
I think for I don't know. I haven't checked it for
I
circles.
I'll have to check it again. I know I just did this on this most recent part because they had the tap hole diameter wrong or something like that. It was a M12 by 1.75 thread, and so I was doing that with the thread mill. Obviously, I think they say not to tap anything bigger than like a number 6 on the OM. I'll probably only ever thread mill in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just much less of a load.
Yeah, and the thread milling was so fast that like it didn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. When you got that much RPM,
I man, I love that machine. So that part had a Torx head on the other side of it. It was like a lug nut, basically with Torx on one end.
mm-hmm.
I was cutting quarter-inch deep with a 1/16 inch end mill at like 50 inches a minute or something like that. Just flying.
Oh my,
It was awesome.
that's insane.
Yeah.
And you didn't break a tool?
I have only broken one tool on my machine so far, and it was a 3 millimeter drill. I have not broken an end mill yet.
That's impressive. That's cool.
So that's gone well so far. It means what it means is I'm not pushing it hard enough because I'm treating it like the Tormach in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that's true. So, well, we could probably keep rambling, but I think
We
this is the
could.
time.
This was a long one,
This was a long one. I didn't expect it to go this
and
long.
I'm tired. Have we broken 2 hours yet?
I think we just did.
No, we're at
right
an hour
it.
43.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Did you see the Within Tolerance episode that was like 4.5 hours? Or listen to it?
Something like that.
It was.
Yes.
It
I
was
haven't
a
listened to the whole thing yet.
fantastic episode, but it was very long.
Yeah. Now we're still podcasting on the outro. It's my turn.
Yeah,
It's my time, AJ. It's my time.
It's your turn to ramble for 20 minutes.
It's my turn. All right, guys. We've reached the end of the podcast where we're delusional and tired and going crazy. But we thank you for listening in and hanging out with us. And this is Harrison with Precision and Ingenuity and AJ with Blank Company signing out.
Oh, yeah, bye.